record this. A very warm welcome to you all. Thank you for joining Global Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa. I'm George Mutalemwa on behalf of the Africa Peace and Development Network, MAMA. Our theme today is World Media Coverage of Africa. And the speaker is Professor Laeed Zaghlami, a seasoned journalist and professor of media studies at Algiers University 3 in Algeria. It is an honor having you again, Brother Laeed. Please join me in welcoming Professor Laeed Zaghlami.
Thank you.
Wonderful.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Today, I will be talking about how the world media is reporting about Africa. And of course, it's with great pleasure that I welcome all of you to be part of our presentation. And of course, I look forward to hearing from you. And it is obvious that one of the main trends, I would say, or main observation is that the world media is dominated by Western media. That's the reality because of history, because of different reasons. But history is there, and of course, that's why we are one way or the other under this I would say this hegemony or monopoly of Western media. And I think what I want to say is just the media, we like it or not, is being distorted, is being used and misused and even abused by different potential actor and operator. And it's clear that when we look at the media worldwide, we see the dominance of Anglo-Saxon media. And I remember 1970s, 80s, there was a famous book by Jeremy Tenstall from City University in London, where he said that, of course, where he mentioned that the media are American. In other words, we cannot deny that nowadays the media are, of course, are Anglo-Saxon origin. And that's why it is important to mention that in our strategy in today's presentation, I will mention different possibility, and I try to get my expose. And of course, I have some difficulties, but I will sort it out very shortly. Of course, as I said to you here, the point is that the media should be, we like it or not, should be part of the game. And less because we are talking about our continent. Of course, so many people speak about Africa as the continent of future. This is a reality, because when we saw the facts, the continent, African population is today 1.4 billion inhabitants and could exceed 4.2 by 2100. Almost 70% of the population are aged between 15 and 13. And the Africa continent is the second largest in terms of land area and population. Unfortunately and paradoxically, is the poorest and the least developed in the world. So, though the continent is undergoing major political, economic, and technological transformation, but also the media is concerned, and we will see in details how the media is being improved. But let's start with the reality and the facts of today. Today, Western media are dominating global news. We cannot deny that. Only because of exclusive Western corporate giant companies which finance and technological wealth allow them to dictate what they want to report about the whole world. And here dear friends and colleagues, we speak about this Western media. They put or they dictate what we call the agenda setting. They choose what they want to publish to report worldwide because they have the authority, they have the facilities, and they have the monopoly. So they determine what is reported about the African and of course about the world in general. As a direct consequence of the free market and competitive forces operating in Western media, the giant corporations are merging and swallowing small ones and becoming open with fewer and fewer conglomeration. It's clear that our problem, in my expose, I will discuss about the image, the picture, the branding, and the image today are at the heart of our world. The branding of the continent is very negative. And of course, this image processing plays a part in the symbolic construction of consensual idea in the social science. So, as semiotic beings by excellence, we have made up of image from social, cultural, and political world. And today, the image is at the center of inter-individual and inter-community alterity that acts as a tool for knowing or not knowing about the world. Of course, what we notice now is just many Western views about Africa are unfortunately and negatively primarily they describe it as Africa as a jungle, as a desert landscape where people speak not clear language. More than that, racism is one of the most significant elements that allowed African colonization to maintain separate classes or of privileged colonizer and oppressed colonial subject. It's clear that this image is still in some part of the media are still pertaining and I would say lasting. So when we compare or when we discover and explore how the media, how the European media describe or present Africa, they of course Africa is is now known and heard about today from European media fabric. So news coverage created the systematic and systemic manufacturing of the continent. And it is based on opposition between democratic West with savage Africa, superiority versus inferiority, civilized people versus non-civilized people. The Western media have been focusing on Africa. Africa, disliked unfortunately by the media, is still a focus of political analysis in Western media, despite the end of the Cold War and the disintegration of East-West conflict. So many people in Western world generally display a significant lack of knowledge about Africa. Some evidence are that Western media organization employed to specifically dump negative news and material when reporting and communicating about Africa. However, the emergence of African journalism it will be a positive sign that could help get out of this humanitarian problem and take a fresh look at political issues. Uh, till now, Africa is described as the dark continent. Africa is described as the dark continent. And of course, since the era of slavery and colonial rules, the image remains in some part of the world still prevailing. One is devoted to a history that has been perpetuated by Western trader, missionary, and explorer, as well as the media, Western media, and of course Africa as the wise man burden. News or report from Africa paint the picture of people who thrive in backward tradition and practice and superstition. Another element of despair and bias towards Africa is this cover of The Economist. It matters how the media report on Africa. On May 2000, the cover of The Economist, the well-known weekly magazine, displayed a map of Africa overlaid by an image of man straining under the weight of shouldered weapon. Above the image was the title, The Hopeless Continent. As you may know, the Economist, which is reaching a reader of more than 1 million globally, distilled a continent of over 1 billion people living in 55 diverse, multicultural, and polyethnic nations into condemning words and an image of war and strife. Thank you to the courtesy of the Western media. Some Western media newspaper, I would say journalists, media professionals have never ever visited Africa, and most of them certainly will not, but they continue to present a negative picture of the continent. So most of them appear or elected themselves to present image of Africa, and they pretend to hold those media professionals in the West, they pretend to hold the truth and the real. They possess this image courtesy, we possess the image courtesy of Western media through representation of Africa. It can be television program, documentary, movie industry, internet, print media, including newspaper, magazine, journals, books, and etc. The media select stories that can sell and omit those that cannot. They report those selected in a way that makes them sell well. The result is the trend of a crisis-driven journalism of churning out news faster and faster, going from the quick and headline, seeking superficial coverage that size on the outrageous, the dramatic, and the exceptional without bothering to place it in its proper context. Here we are, Africa is being out of context, and of course this is not fair justice. So there is a tendency of commercialization of news and corporate factors. The media corporation that own the various media outlets in the West are driven naturally by the profit motive. Their corporation or this corporation are by law required to make profit for their shareholders. Failure to do that, they may face bankruptcy. Therefore, commercial interests shape the portrait of the world affair. Today, there is no good news from Africa. The danger of the single story is that it creates one view, and that view becomes the sole defining representation of a thing, or worse, a place and its people. In the United States and Europe, there is a single story of Africa, and the story is a negative one. And the single story is not lacking in complexity, but also it presents Africa as a place of danger, of darkness, of violence, of poverty and hopelessness. That's the truth. And of course, we have also, besides that, we have a partial and selective coverage. Moving beyond the Africa of wars narrative, the 55 countries of the continent are not only ones to have violence news in their daily average, but this partial and selective coverage often confined to highlighting the number of death, wounded, or displaced people, generates stereotypes and myth, and that fuel the perception of Africa eternally and entirely at war. So the lack of coverage contributed to a poor understanding of the economic, social, political, and cultural dynamics of the country. So Africa has become the geostrategic background. The way the media report on African nation impacts the way the public perceive the continent. It is, as I said already, increasingly a biased depiction of Africa in contributing the tension in USA and Africa. I'm talking about the picture of Africa in US media and US television and so forth. African leaders continue to push back against the notion, of the continent as a geostrategic background between United States, Russia, China. Now we speak also about Turkey, United Arab Emirates, and even some European countries. So in other words, African has become a geostrategic battle between the giant countries, the giant power. And above this misinformation, we have a series of misinformation. And misinformation, which is lacking information and reliability and truth about Africa, this misinformation concept has become a growth industry in the West. The media fabrication of international event and Africa is always put as a continent on the sideline. The African continent seemed to attract the attention of Western media only, and I precise and I point out, when traumatic events take place here involving large number of victims, as it is happening nowadays in Democratic Republic of Congo, in Goma, in Great Lake, and so forth, in Sudan, and in many parts. Only when we have when we have wars, famines, epidemic, put Africa on the top of the international news agenda for a time and number of crises. Disinformation is also another burning issue on the continent, on the African continent, where it constitutes a dual political and geopolitical problem that cuts across all society. In the early days of the social networking era, African continent witnesses a rapid increase in modern disinformation campaign. Although misinformation has always been part of the information and communication ecology in Africa, the instantaneous nature of the social network has increased the frequency of intentionally false and misleading information campaign. The scale of misinformation in Africa reflects a global trend, highlighting the urgent need to understand its origin, who are the instigator, and far-reaching consequences. So here we are in front of stereotypes and colonial origin. The current stereotypes and myths, as we have already seen about Africa, are all of them of origin colonial. So we cannot deny that. Those stereotypes and myths are reductive, and Africa, as I said, again to repeat, is perceived as a place of darkness and hopelessness. Many Western African, as I said, see it still a jungle, and this is the result of the stereotypes. Whereas when it comes to the myth, which are the more complex notion, which undergird the simply form of stereotypes, they help to provide a framework for viewing stereotypes, so that an entire system such as white supremacy becomes possible, because it no longer sounds ridiculous but common sense. Unfortunately, with this presence of stereotypes and myth around the continent of colonial origin, The media are nurturing from the myth and stereotypes. The media reinforce by and we can notice that European and American primarily encounter Africa through stereotypes and myth. And specific news case studies demonstrates how individual stereotypes and myths are reinforced by the media structure, choice of coverage, presentation of events and issues. An analysis of the Western news media demonstrates that structural bias and operating frameworks perpetuate negative attitude toward Africa and toward African. So, in other words, the media are reinforcing the myths and the stereotypes that are the product of the colonial period. Here we have a systematic misrepresentation of Africa. There has been for a long time now a systematic trend of misrepresenting Africa in Western countries. And of course, the powerful Western media has the entire responsibility of this misrepresentation. The Western public has been exposed to this pattern of misrepresentation, which in turn have been solidified into stereotypes or generalization or extrapolation about all Africa. As I said, the impact is the single negative story, and Africa is obscured by media negative or of the single negative story. And this negative story was created by the effort of colonial officials and institutions to perpetuate white supremacy and Western domination over the continent. It continues because stereotypes and myths are undergirded colonialism that have not been challenged yet. The underlying myths that form this single story are often subtle, and therefore it is continuing to support the stereotypes and myth of African that began with the conquest of colonialism. So the one question or the move now is from the darkness, from the hopeless to a rising continent. And of course, there is a matter of being optimistic and hopeful for the future of our continent. Not everything is gloomy, but no, everything not is gloomy, but there is, of course, as I said, a major transformation in Africa, and African media are going or undergoing major transformation today due to the evolution and the introduction of information and communication technology. This transformation have challenged traditional media. Also, they challenged the business model and journalistic identity itself in the African context, where viability, professionalism are recent concern and major challenge. Today, the political change throughout the African continent over the past decade have brought to the forefront of the socio-political landscape a group of players who cannot be ignored. The media is part now of the transformation. Media's role as instrument of democratization, as watchdog, and also as a voice of opposition. The media are involved in electoral process. Their injection of life in democracy by opening up forums for debate have made them play a key role for reasons that include their potential to, of course, and their involvement in conflict and peace process. Today, maybe in arbitrary manner, there are Anglophone Africa, which was colonized by Britain, and Francophone Africa under French and Belgium, have developed media system that quite not similar. This contrast is especially illustrated by the structure of the media. So let's make it clear So today there are two main media landscape. One impacted by the British English-speaking language, and the other by the French English and French language speaking. But those are illustrated by the structure of the media market, the style of journalism practice, the function assigned to media, both by its professional member and by the government. There are distinct approach to non-commercial approach to community radio station and legal framework inspired by different models. So from scarcity to profusion, the continent today has gone from a situation of scarcity where each country has barely a handful of titles, a newspaper, which were connected to the government or single ruling party, plus a single national broadcast. There is now today an impressive proliferation and the profusion of a newspaper and radio station that compete for the domestic market and reach beyond their border. Today, we have Africa on its form of progress. The effort and the resources being poured into foreign efforts to win Africa's hearts and mind are proof that the continent is becoming increasingly relevant to the global economy and international power structure. That is in a way that is what it represents in its own form of progress to Africa. I mean, now we have a new image. International news image of Africa are no longer constructed entirely by Western. This is the good news, but born foreign Western correspondent, but local journalists with deep local network, with strong faith of their own continent, with background knowledge are writing news, although in limited way, but still they provide an alternative and localized perspective on the news events. And this is much more positive and much more exciting. So we have new stories, new storytellers, new narratives. So there is a change in the narrative. There is a change in the way we are talking about Africa. The international news coverage of Africa has long been criticized for its episodic, simplistic, and relentlessly negative content. Today, commentators argue that the news content homogenize the continent, place of course, an overemphasis on African humanitarian issues, simplify ethnicity and identity, and highlight Western-led rescue effort. Scholars have argued that this representation are both powerful and dangerous. They perpetuate the negative stereotype, reinforce the new colonial power imbalance, and undermine intercultural empathy and correctness. Today, time has come to rethink and to reinvest in our development. Africa has a strong need and necessity to rethink its own development models and systematically correct the tendentious and racist falsification of its history. It is no less true that the imperative to rethink and reinvent its development is becoming categorical and crucial. It is also important to learn from our history by taking ownership of new challenges and issues and face the continent. Now we continue with a series of asks, of questions. From the heart of darkness to Africa rising. Today, Africa media image in the 21st century aims to explore representation of the continent and the production of that image, especially by international news media. Factors that have transformed the global media system, changing host perspectives, are told in the form of the media that empowers new voices. How has new media changed those views are represented? How do foreign correspondents should interact with their audience in the social media? So how do we think about the image of Africa today? How can the African culture reflect the power of the real power of the continent? How does the image of women impact development? How to build Africa by with its youth? So thinking about the image of Africa today, given that the image of Africa is a factor of development, developing African means first rethinking its image and its decolonizing. It means attempting to dismantle prejudice, stereotypes, myths, changing the imaginary, building self-esteem and confidence. Africa, or to say, image of Africa has indeed a power of persuasions and acts in the apprehensions and conception of the individual. The image contributes to the reopposition of a space, of a region, and continuing through several direction and objectives. Today also we have to ask question about how African culture will reflect the power of the continent. Do African countries think and reflect their image? Or why do African countries fail to diversify their image? Of course, each country is a cultural reservoir with potential to be developed. We should write about the impact of today's negative image of the continent's people and the need for a new narrative. That's why I say new storytellers and new narratives. How can this aspect drive the continent development? How do African write about the continent? How do they define themselves? What is the image do they convey for their future in the future? This is the main question we should ask ourselves if we want really to recover, to reconquer our dignity, our image, and it's all our concerns. Thank you very much.
Wow, thank you so much indeed, Laeed, for this wonderful presentation. And we have seen this image of Africa, especially as portrayed by the Western media, and which have been painting Africa in a dark light. And but we need to have a new narrative, new storytellers. And so I would like now to open the floor to the participants to ask questions or make comments. Yes, Janet, you are welcome.
Hello, thank you, Professor Laeed, for this fantastic, you gave a wonderful overview and so clear and powerful, and you make the concise out of a very complicated and expansive issues of the continent. You make a very clear, cohesive message, and I appreciate that. So I just wanted to, this is a little bit funny, but I have to show you that it isn't always true that that we don't that the Western media, because my husband's first wife, who died unfortunately, lived in Africa for several years, and I think it was in the 70s, published this book, Bright Continent, about sub-Saharan Africa. So this is on my bookshelf, and it guides our interest. My question is that what media would you recommend for people, maybe inside but also outside Africa, to continue to learn and hear a voice? For example, we may listen here in New York to Al Jazeera and coming out of the Middle East, or what media would you suggest us to be learning from as we continue this journey with you?
Can I answer, George?
Yes, please go ahead and
Okay,
answer.
thank you. Thank you. Good afternoon to you. Good morning, good evening to all of you and to Janet. Thank you for the good question. Let's make it clear from the beginning. We are not here to, from my question, from my expose, I'm not here to blame anyone. Maybe we can blame the colonial period. This is a fact, but this is history. Now we have to blame, we African, we have to blame ourselves for not keeping still thinking that things have not changed. We should, if there is an answer to your question, this is the question should be put to all media professional and of course writer and journalist and all of Africa. They should remove all, they should explain to the rest of the world that there is an emerging, there is a rising continent with a lot of hope, a lot of, as I said, 70% of the population are youth. So we have a lot of dreams. So it's a question, of course, there are some, we have to go through some kind of partnership between some news, international news corporation, but we are well served by ourselves. And that's why we of course, we need, for the continent, need more democracy, more freedom of expression, more media pluralism. That's what we should think when it comes to how to improve, how to remove all these stereotypes and myths and prejudice we have seen here and there. So we have, first of all, I don't like to put the blame on the Western media because they are trying, portraying or painting us wrongly or negatively. It's also a part of our blame. We have done nothing to give the best of our place. What is happening now in DRC, in Democratic Republic of Congo, with famine, war, etc. This is also a bad picture. We are broadcasting very negative picture. So that's to say we should have our own tools of promoting our good image, but of course with the support of all our sympathizers worldwide and who are really contributing to remove the ordeal that face the African continent.
Thank you so much, Laeed. And if Janet has another question, we'll ask it, of course. And now we turn to Richard. How are you, Richard? Welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good afternoon to you. I am very much happy to hear from Professor Laeed on the note of media perceptions to Africans' beliefs, culture, identity, and then and the rest. But if I should put something on, you realize that even the slave trade was business people. The real culture of the world has already been arranged in such a way that if you portray white as this, it will not go anywhere. If you portray black as this, it will not go anywhere. But my blame is on the politicians who try to appease everybody by going outside the cultural expectation and then try to picture something good in the eyes of people. Other than that, if black is black, white is white, green is green, we all have the same image, identity, and the same, thinking. So those media trying to, use that image as a African so needy, or trying to use the image of white as white so superior, strong. They are just turning things upside down. Really, in Ghana, those who are building sea defense, they are white from I think Japan or India. The same blacks are also somewhere building something huge. Do we should I see those building this sea defense or bridges as slaves, or should I see them as people needy and need to come to Africa to work? No, you see. So those media trying to use what is it, business type of attitude to push their agenda, they are mistaken. So Professor Said, I'm so glad to hear that from you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Now we turn to Odoch. Odoch Pido, you're welcome.
Thank you, George. Thank you very much, Professor Laeed, for the presentation. It's definitely very thought-provoking. I'm just wondering how we may tell our own stories in our own type of media if we are going to think in the same way the people who are already speaking negatively about Africa think, and if we are going to speak in the same way that these people who are already speaking negatively about Africa are doing. That is one question. The second one, I may ask you to maybe go to the slide where you were talking. We need to invent development and something innovative. I am not sure about the slide. If I see the slide, then the question will come. Do you have the slide? Oh, I don't remember the number, but it was about inventing development and something about innovation. Both of them were coming on the same slide.
Yeah, I will answer you, yes. Okay.
All right. Please go ahead.
Okay. Let's again make it clear. We are not in the colonial period anymore.
Can you put that slide on the screen?
We are talking about legacy and fallacy. Legacy, of course, we inherit what's happening now in many parts of Africa, which was divided between different types of colonization, European countries. But this is of the past, and still they have some kind of legacy. But what I want to say, we have now to think rightly and carefully and positively that we should think, and with the advent of technology, it's a big advance. We have to make a leapfrog in our democracy, in our media freedom, and so forth. It happened. I have visited a few countries in Africa, with Senegal, with of course with Ghana, Nigeria, South Africa, Kenya, Ethiopia, Mauritius. I found really there is an emerging, very enthusiastic newspaper and media. So not everything is gloomy in Africa. No, on the contrary, we have a lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm coming from people within the continent. And of course, it's under the shoulder of the media professional of Africa they are first to promote the email, because now with the facilities that been offered by technology and all these facilities, we should now reconquer our narratives, and we should tell our stories by our own wordings. And from that, it is important that we have to understand that we can get in some kind of partnership. And of course, the picture right now, let me explain one thing. We are not in a position to compete with BBC or with Al Jazeera or with Sky News or any other world media outlet. But we have to secure at least a margin of space within our own continent. African politicians, African leaders are advocating the credo of African problem, African solution. So this is their way of thinking. Africa has been embarked on the process of the Agenda 2063. Africa has been promoting and advocating the African Continent Free Trade Association. There are so many projects, very inspiring, very interesting. So the media should collaborate, should follow, should support, should accompany this project, because this project are source and matter of hopes for the future of the population. So we have to get to work closely with politicians, with entrepreneurs, and so forth, to get the possibility for Africa to take off the crown. So we cannot always expect or wait for foreign news to report on what is happening in Somalia or in, as I said, Great Lake problem. I said there are some emerging news media. I take the example of Nation Media Group. This is in Kenya, and they have been great job in Nigeria. We have Trust, we have so many standard, we have so many well-known newspapers which really have their own, as I said, independence, and can get their own. They can challenge the news from Western countries. So the idea is we have to think how to first of all to remove all negative aspects, stereotypes, myths, which are the product of the colonial period. This is the past. And the question I put the last slide is what we have to do. It's our problem, it's our concern, it's our main concern. We have to think now we have the facilities. We have to fight for securing enough space of liberty, of freedom of expression, freedom of thinking, and reshaping the image, and reshaping the image of Africa, reproducing, recreating, refabricating the image of Africa. When we see, I show you the cover of the Economist 2000, the hopeless continent. This is not true. This is not either right. This is not bad. Sorry, it's all part of the truth. But why? Maybe it's an insult for those Africans. But what we should do? We cannot just cross our fingers or our hands and do nothing. No, we have to improve. We have to prove to the other that Africa is changing with all this technology, with their competency and all this human potential. Of course, those who write about portray Africa as continent of darkness and hopeless, maybe they do it in purpose. They have never visited Africa, but still they have the image from the past. It's us to contradict them, to show them there is improvement. There are matter of hopes in the whole continent. 55 countries, 55 culture, 55, of course, the region of hope, and people have a lot of projects. That's what we should give the young generation and women alike to contribute to the development of Africa.
Thank you. But the slides which were shown just now, the first one is the one which is relevant to the question I want to ask.
Can I show it again?
It is to rethink development or something like rethink and reinvent is the first one. You have shown me 3 slides. No, not that one, the one before.
So as we wait for that slide, I'm also going to ask Laeed a question on the emergency of African journalism.
The one before.
I don't know whether you have, like in the curriculum for training journalists, whether there is this kind of, topic or theme or course on African journalism. You can answer that, of course, at your time. And there is also, I see, a wonderful invitation to Addis Ababa here from Mistru. And I'm going also to ask you, Mistru, please to extend this invitation verbally as we proceed. So it's nice just to have you, and thank you for this invitation. I think that the slide is there. Thanks, Peter.
Am I getting close?
Yes, that's the one.
Oh,
That's
thank you.
it. Wonderful.
Do I go ahead and ask, or
Yes, please.
your question should be answered first?
No, ask first, Odoch.
Yeah, the statement here is to rethink. In other words, we in Africa should rethink and reinvent our development. You, as the scholar who has already looked at this ahead of us, and for us to participate, how do you think we could really do this? How could we reinvent our development? And would that development be similar or different from the way we understand development today? So the question is, how do you think we might do this? And
Yes.
in the end, would our development, if it is ours in Africa, how similar or different would it be to the way development is now presented?
Thank you for your question. First of all, development is the key driving force. We should agree on this. In other words, we should proceed to develop ourselves. Now, what is the model? I'm not here to dictate any model, but it has to be the emanation of the reality of each country. And of course, we are not here to imitate the Western model or this or capitalist model or private. But I first, from my own and my humble self, my modest contribution, I always go for something which is in relation with our context, our history, our culture. This is what we cannot impose on our society a foreign model. So, as you said it rightly, we have to develop, that's for sure. But on which basis, which model, we have to think, of course, think locally, not act, I would say, think globally, but act locally. I mean, you can think in different models in the whole world of the media, but when it comes to implementing this model, we have to do it according to the rules, to the games, to the values, to the principle of each society, of each country, of each culture. Providing development is the key trends, the key element in what you do. Of course, the objective of the development is to adopt, to advocate a new narrative of hope, narrative of self-esteem, narrative of dignity, narrative of being proud of ourselves. That's what we want. The development is to remove everything that been inherited from the past and has contributed to our deadlock situation. That's why development in itself is very positive act. Now we think about the model. I leave it to each one, and you particularly think of the model that is convenient. That's what I want to say. Convenient to our countries. There is no universal model, by the way. No universal model. The model which can be accepted by the majority, that which be. Likewise, we can always go for something like a combination of what is not, what is local, what is national, what is international. But still, we have, if this, we are accountable to the society in which we operate. That's exactly the best model is the model which provide a good result, which meet the needs and the expectation of your public, of your audience.
All right. Thank you so much, Laeed. And Mr. If you are there, please, could you speak to this invitation to Mama as Laeed prepares for the question on the emergence of African journalism? Yes, please, Mr. You are welcome.
Yes, Dr. George, I would like to say thank you, everyone. You have a very wonderful seminar. I want to bring Africa Peace and Development Network here in Addis Ababa, the capital of Africa, for your international exposure. Because as you know, Addis Ababa is the capital of Africa, and there are about 136 embassies where you guys are calling ambassadors for seminars. And I want Africa Peace and Development Network, a primary coordinator of all African civil society peace organizations, for collective collaboration to contribute something tangible regarding the Africa Union Agenda 2063 by promoting a culture of peace and tolerance, promoting people-centered development, and the new African Trade Center. And this is my third invitation for you. And in my experience, we have a lot of contacts from the African Union. We can organize together. And you guys, Dr. George, I thank you very much from my bottom of heart. You are opening now doors for everyone to see that it's possible, and it is time for Africa to reshape our image. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your invitation. I'm very glad because first of all, I visited Addis Ababa at least 5 times, so I am familiar with it. What is amazing about Ethiopia, despite all the conflicts and the between different regions and so forth, Ethiopia remains stronger and vital. I think you may have noticed the last time our president attended the 38th summit, and he was greatly welcomed by President Ahmed, Prime Minister Ahmed. We appreciate it. By the way, Algeria owed great respect to Ethiopia, because when we had this problem of war between Algeria and Morocco at what we call the Sand of War, Emperor Haile Selassie, he was mediating. So appreciation to you. I will be very glad to. By the way, I came even to, I was invited to Tana Forum 2 years ago, 3 years ago. But what is important about Ethiopia, Ethiopia has done gigantic steps in terms of image. It's not image of Bob Geldof 1985, my friend, anymore. I went to, yes, this is image of the past. Now, Ethiopia and Addis Ababa, you see all this high building, business, and so forth. So it's a very positive, very inspiring, very interesting image, and I will be very glad to attend that and to come to your place, and vice versa. We can do something likewise in North Africa. But frankly speaking, here we have some countries. I don't like to single out the countries which have done great effort in terms of developing and promoting the image. We have Ethiopia, we have Kenya, we have South Africa, we have Nigeria, we have Ghana. I'm talking about English-speaking countries. I hope those from French won't blame me. But I have been visiting all these countries, but I see really emerging, very optimistic, very rising media doing a great job. And of course, it's at the end of the day, we should have our own African media outlet. I am sometimes very uneasy when I speak about African news. Why don't we have our African news? Not like Euronews. This is for European Union. African Union should have its own network of African news, not like the one it exists in Congo, which I think it belongs to the French. So I'm very pleased to accept your invitation, Mr. You have my email. Keep in touch, and we make it happen, inshallah. By the way, in Algeria is the 5th day of Ramadan, so that's why we cannot come during Ramadan.
Okay. Thank you very much to hear this interesting sound.
My pleasure,
Yeah.
Mr.
God bless you all. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much indeed, Mr. and for this wonderful invitation. I think now what's next is to plan for this to take place. I think
Yes.
I'm going to also to ask also members here to think of a day where we can do the planning and so that things can move as you proposed. So thank you so much for this wonderful invitation.
Thank you, Dr. George.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you. So the question on the Western, on the emergence of African journalism, would you like to say something about this? How is this, what's the content of the African, journalism, Laeed?
Well,
okay, then I'll go to.
Yeah. Well, I think we have to. There are some facts, and there are some evidence. It's not easy to change the present situation because, as I said to you, right now, as I said already, as Terry Mettenstahl said in his book in 18, the media are American. So those who detain the facilities, those who detain the tools, those who have all these facilities impose their view. Of course, my friend George, we had, like you, romanticism, political romanticism in 1990 when we spoke about the new order of information and communication, the defect, but that was of the past. Of course, we have the Pan-African news agency. Also, this is the past. Things have changed. Now, the world is being so competitive. But still, because and I do strongly believe in the future of our continent, and Africa is the continent of the future. That's why we have so many people coming from different part of the world, investing, invading, exploring, and of course there are so many summits between Africa and Japan, Africa and South Korea, Africa, Russia, Africa, Turkey, Africa, USA. All over the world want to make business with Africa. So I would say this is an opportunity for us to get benefit from this and to make transformative change, not only in the field of business, of trade, but in politics, but also in the media. The media we should focus on the media because the media are the actor of change, are the agent of a change. The media are the driving force for if we cannot get enough coverage, if we cannot get enough reportage, enough media about this and that. Right now, what we know what is happening in Goma, in Democratic Republic of Congo, it's only from Agence France Presse, French agency, or Reuters or CNN. Why not from the Africans themselves? This is what we need. And here we have a lot of work to do. And there is an emerging, let's make it, I'm not insulting our fellow and young generation of journalism. We have many schools of journalism mushrooming throughout the continent and universities, faculties, and so forth. All these should work towards decolonizing the media. Should work on the aspect how to decolonize the media, how to make the media accountable to their own people. That's what we want. Of course. Now, if we have CNN, or if we have the BBC, or if we have Sky News, or whatever channel, or Dutch Video, or something like that, of course, it's their right to report from our lenses. But what we want, we want to have the truth, the truth from Africa by our lenses, by our journalists, our own people. Journalists should have faith in their capacity, in their competency, and promote. That's what we should promote.
Right. Thank you so much, Laeed. Peter, and then Ms. True. Peter, please.
Oh, thank you. What you point out about the propagandizing, the colonializing of the information begins very early in my life. At the age of 16, I was in Nigeria for 1 year. My father was probably supported by USAID, although the AID man in the region was sort of the butt of a lot of jokes. My friend next to me on the bench in school, Madu, took me under his wing. He was a strong athlete and a brilliant student and well admired by everyone. And he made me his friend just at great risk, this strange white kid from out of the country. And about 6 months into this, he was sitting with me and he said, I think you're better than us. You have the airplanes and the skyscrapers. And I was floored. This was where, for me, the propaganda suddenly appeared. It was invisible to me before. It was all Tarzan movies and lions and tigers. And then all of a sudden, this wall came up. And I had no answer for him. I was completely thrown. And it has shaped my future since then. So it's a very old system creating an image of the African continent, which arises from the American enslavement of Africans and so on, which had to be supported by a narrative, which became this racist culture. The Black people had to be made less than human. And there's a long history that you know all about. There's nothing new for you here. But in my own work, when the internet came, it made a change that was so profound, and we still don't understand it. And I liken it to driving a car into the river. And as the car is sinking, what we'll do is we'll step on the brake. This, in other words, our normal actions no longer work and often are contraindicated. So I have a quote I'll put in the chat from a book that I'm working on. It basically says when the internet went critical, there was more than a decade of automated, individually tailored marketing. And it didn't even work as intended. Advertising does not support the social platforms. But millions of background anxiety-inducing micro-impressions of self-worth, body image, social status, losing the lottery, personal jeopardy, and worst of all, the hostile structure of the global economy began to distort and divide our worlds. And now reality is one to a customer. And fear is the most reliable attention getter. Tolerance levels rise with repetition, and the inevitable trend is toward collective addiction in the ambience of terror. So that is an atmosphere, or it's like a petri dish where certain germs will grow, like molds and things. The opportunistic colonialism blossomed in this environment. And I think that's what you're pointing to now. I think you're absolutely right on the money, completely accurate. And this is a very timely and valuable expose that you're making. And I hope it spreads far and wide. I will be looking through your presentation for things I can cite in my writing, because this is an insight that few have really researched and seen so clearly. So I thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter, for your valuable comments and remark. Of course, let's make it clear again. Here, what I try from this I would say modest contribution presentation is to enable our media, our politicians, that they should consider in their work, in their everyday work, in their business, about the image they develop from what they do. The image, whether at local or at continental. Think about what the other perceive, conceive, and perceive you, how they portray you. It's we have all life. People are living with stereotypes and prejudice and myths. We should come to a conclusion that this is things of the past, and we are not blaming anybody, but we blame to ourselves for not doing enough to present, to give a good image of ourselves through, of course, image of tolerance, of forgiveness, of freedom of expression, like this one. And here we are, thanks to George, we are offering this forum for discussion for the whole continent. This is an opportunity for all of us to learn from each other, to listen to each other, to understand each other, and from one on to go along with each other and respect each other. That's what we need. We cannot stick to the past. The past is the past. Now we have to recover our own dignity, as I said, our own culture. There is no poor culture or bad culture. All the culture, all the language are equal in terms of values, in terms of dignity, in terms of independence, and so forth.
I hear you pointing to a context that Howard Richards would say, the context is profit above everything. And that determines that image that we present, the most profitable image. And you're pointing to another context of dignity, of respect, of empowerment, of African spirit, that is what's crucial. There are plenty of consultants now grooming images for the most income. And I thank you for pointing out this alternative, which is so much more important and so necessary to human survival. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you for mentioning that. Again, as I said, we are not here to blame anybody. We are not here going into some kind of controversial issues, but rather to bring about, because some people who are writing about Africa, as I said, they have never even visited Africa. They just learn from books or from this and that. Time has come where we have we African to promote it, and we or the other Western countries to have to come and understand there are many changes going along.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And Mr. You're welcome.
Yes, Doctor, thank you again. Just one question. I'm just asking in terms of making sustainability on peace and security agenda. When is the time Africa use our domestic resource mobilization economy to support the peace and security agenda?
Can you repeat, please?
My question is, these days, in one of the biggest challenge in the field of peace building and conflict resolution is finding financial support from donors. So why not we are changing this method by using African domestic resource mobilization economy to support our economy, peace and security agenda?
Yes, you are right. I think, well, I don't know a lot about your project. Well, what I want to say, I think we have a new leadership in African Union. You know better than me. Huh? We have the new
Yes,
president, new chief executive officer, new
yes.
secretary general, new chairman from Djibouti, and the lady, the deputy from Algeria. It happened, I know her. So we can approach these people. And what happened, I think time now, as I said to you, we have to draw the attention of people in within the African Union leadership about the importance of having to focus on media as an actor, an agent of accompanying their action. Of course, it's not enough to have director of communication or directorate of communication and information within the African Union. This is not enough. We should have some bodies which are working together to support and to sustain the action of African Union. Of course, any comments coming in a proposal coming from you, I don't, I will just accept it. But we will think in, since you have my own email and I got yours, we can get into how to implement it. But overall, it is important that Africans should now think about the email. I don't know in their own structure or in their own hierarchy as it is done in in other bodies like United Nations or like European Union. If African Union have their own, I would say, body in charge of branding, in charge of image, in charge of promoting this and that through media.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Right. Janet and Evelyn. We'll start with Janet, please.
Thank you. This is fantastic, rich discussion. The presentation was excellent, but the discussion really opens up the topic. So I'm very grateful to everyone's questions and Professor Laeed's responses. And for this seminar, George, which makes us possible to be together having this discussion. So thank you. I'm just thinking, because I tried to write about the African Union and transitional justice, and there seemed to be a big gap between the African Union, you know, quoting from the UN, and then on the ground. And so I think your question, Ms. True, is very, and what Laeed is bringing up about the media. I think also those of us who work in universities and other institutes can help fill in that gap by making present more of what we see, what you see on the ground in Africa, and bringing it forward. I think that's really important. I know there are a lot of also cultural programs. Well, I live in New York, so I listen to NPR, and there's a great deal of African music presented as, you know, new sounds to us, or hybrid collaborations, and also dance and art performances. But I think that the real voices of Africa need still much more dissemination, and there's so much going on actually that we can bring it more to the fore. That's my thought. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Janet. And let's turn to Evelyn. Evelyn, you are welcome.
Thank you very much. And as ever, I echo the congratulations on the presentation and also on this collective forum. So, and Mubarak Ramadan to
Thank
all.
you. Thank you, Evelyn. Thank you, Evelyn.
I wanted to draw I'm hearing a big parallel between what the professor has talked, I mean, that very concise and it sounds like a contradiction in terms, a concise overview of a very complex subject, as Janet mentioned. I believe it also provides the skeleton for similar analysis of the parallel between the coverage of militarization and peace building. So many, I believe, and this is my question, would you agree that many of the symptoms of that are needed in decolonization would also be the same ones that would be required for demilitarization of the media coverage?
Thank you, Evelyn. Frankly, of course, the media should be an agent of change, should be agent of transformation. So it depends on those who detain the media. And in the case of Africa, it's very sad to remember what happened in 1980s as you may remember, as you may know, sorry, in 1980, 1990 in Rwanda with Radio Milcolin. So how you see here we have a media which was used as agent of violence, of perpetuating all this and that. This gives me the impression of what we call media, peace media. Peace media is a media which advocate peace. And I think in the context of Africa, the concept of peace is not well developed. Maybe it is well developed in Asian culture, where they have more peaceful people, where they are more or less adopting the peaceful solution, pacific solution, compared to Africa and some part of the Middle East. They tend to be more violent in their way of resolving their issues. So anyhow, it's a matter of we should have this media and we should, in the core of the media, put the main goal is how to, of course, to encourage, how to spread tolerance, how to spread good common sense, how to spread living together and so forth. And here still media, peace media, sorry.
All over.
Can I speak, please? Peace media requires an environment, an ideal environment for culture, for forgiveness, for understanding each other, for peace loving, and so forth. It is not easy, but the process may take a little bit longer. But we have to start to see the first element of it on the ground. And right now, of course, what we see in the Middle East with Gaza problem, what we see with the advent of the war between Ukraine and Russia. So and what we see in USA, of course, some of you may know better than me, the role of the military and the industrial complex, which is supporting the war all by selling, of course, arms and so forth. So it has to be an civilized act worldwide, but not only in Africa. Unfortunately, as I said in my presentation, for some countries, Africa has become the battleground between the different countries, whether it is Russia, it's China, what is USA, what is European Union, what is Turkey, where it is United Arab Emirates. Unfortunately, they are abusing of the I would say the weakness and the vulnerability of those countries. We can just mention what is going in Somalia or what is going in Sudan, how foreign countries are supporting different factions against each other. The army, the Sudanese army against the rapid force. So yes, but media can do nothing if the political will is not there, and if the military refrain from intervening.
Thanks so much, Laeed. Richard, you're welcome.
Yes, please. I was about to say this. Sir Mistru, I think, was asking of does the African countries, what does African countries get their funds for supporting peace programs? I just Googled here and it says African primarily should use their domestic funds to support peace, agenda. But thinking around, I'm sure that the domestic funds may be used in the remunerations of political appointees, and then maybe the borrowed money that the borrowed money for development part could be used in contributing to this this fund, which may be a bad practice. What we earn, what we produce, what we get. There should be an agency that will deal directly with the African Union as we bring in our proceeds, and then the rest will be we should not think about the rest at all. What we get from what we do is what we need to submit as our contribution to African Union, so that they can also use it in peace development processes. But I believe, I'm not sure anyway, but I believe they will use that for their remuneration, paying MPs, paying this ministers, and then maybe borrowed money will be used in contributing to AU. It could be one of our weaknesses. And if it is so, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Would you like to say something about that, Laeed?
Yes, well, I would say that I try just to raise the point of how our continent is portrayed worldwide. Of course, as I said earlier, the world media is dominated by Western. That's for true. That's for sure. And this is a fact. What we want to do right now is how to regain our own space within this world media sphere, if I may say so. And of course, African Union, as the representative of the 55 countries, should play a key role in this area. I'm so sorry sometimes when it comes to, for instance, for the question of peace and security in Africa. I understand that so many peace action to restore peace and security are supported by European. And of course, the European, when they donate the money, they impose you the way that we should invest this money, we should use this money. So time has come where African themselves, which is, by the way, George, it's a very rich country, my friend. If we look at diamond in Botswana, uranium in Mali, lithium in Democratic Republic of Congo, etc., etc., African is the continent of the future. I think that's what we have to review, to reshape our way of thinking. We are the future of the industry, of the technology. So that's why instead of begging X or Y, and I don't mind having money from donator, as long as we share the same values, as long as they do not interfere, as long as they contribute to our well-being, and I don't mind, but not use as money as a stick to I would say, to make some kind of blackmailing. No, we should not. And also those who are offering their support and their help should do it for themselves and for us. Because we must live in the same in the same, I would say, for the same goal for the humanity as a whole. That's why it is important that we work towards sharing and caring, and this is what is important. But after all, we don't expect for the other to do for you what you firstly should do for yourself.
Wow, thank you so much indeed, Laeed. And we have come really to the end of our conversation for today, but I'm sure we have learned quite a lot, especially on the world media coverage of Africa. And we've been told that Africa is the country of the future. And so we need to see how we can paint really a true light, of Africa. And so I thank you, Laeed, so much for your time. And I thank everybody who has been here today. So we look forward to seeing you again next week and on Wednesday. Thank you so much and all the best.
Thank you. Thank you. All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye. All the best. Thank you
Bye-bye.
for
Thank you so much.
coming.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you, sir.
All the best. Thank you. Bye-bye.